So Utah's been pretty successful with the two quarterback system. It's always kind of you hear that that's not supposed to happen. Find a rhythm like that is what they're doing kind of an exception to the general philosophy that you don't use a two quarterback system, or I don't know. It seems like they're pretty successful.
I think that philosophically can work either way. You know, I think if I think our general philosophy has been if those guys are different enough in some way, that can absolutely work. I think particularly in this day and age in our offense of how we, we don't huddle, the cadence is a little bit different, all those things. There's a little bit less of a huge difference in, if you go in for 2 series and then I go in for 2 series, they don't really, it doesn't really matter as far as the cadence and the huddle and all those things that maybe traditionally has been something, or from a leadership standpoint, might be a little bit different. But, I think both those guys are really good. They've both made a ton of plays over the years. Travis Wilson has done some great things. Unfortunately he was banged up last year. But yeah, they're both very capable guys.
Mark, aside from his abilities on the field, what stood out to you about Royce Freeman when you interacted with him in recruiting?
His maturity is just his intelligence, his maturity, his family is awesome. Just a high character guy off the charts. And as soon as you met his parents, you could tell exactly where it came from. And just a high quality young man for sure.
Some guys might look at the other players you had at that position and be concerned about immediate playing time. I guess, what does it say about him that didn't seem to be an obstacle for him?
Yeah, that's one thing that I think our guys have passed down over the years, whether it's at receiver or tailback, is just that unselfish competitive edge of our skill guys. And we talked about it in our team meeting yesterday. Marcus's first touchdown, whatever it was, 30-yard run. Byron Marshall blocks 2 guys. I mean, does an unbelievable job. Pharaoh Brown does an unbelievable job. Dwayne Stanford does an unbelievable job. And those guys have no chance to touch the football. And then on the second one, where he was kind of untouched around the right corner, it was Charles, it was Royce, it was Dwayne again. And so sometimes you're going to have the rock, sometimes you're not. But great, unselfish guys that are highly competitive and good with the ball in their hands, when they get it, make us go. Absolutely.
It's been a while since his team played at Utah. You think your guys have a sense for the crowd? I mean, this place has a pretty good reputation,
Yeah.
but maybe a little under the radar reputation too for how tough it is to play.
Yeah, it's a great atmosphere. It's very similar to Autzen Stadium in terms of the fans are very smart, very passionate, great student section. And they're really good. And so that combination, they're going to show up and be crazy and be loud. And that's where we just have to be dialed in on our end of it. They've forced a ton of, I think they lead the country in forcing, illegal procedure and that kind of stuff. They average over 5 a game for the visiting team. And so that's something that we certainly have to take care of.
And Finley?
Talk a bit about Ifo Ekpreolomu and just what he's meant to the defense the last couple of years or so.
How long do you have? No, Ifo's a stud. Another great guy from a great family. Just a high character, competitive, tough, smart guy. He's really done a nice job of mentoring the young guys in the secondary, the corners and the safeties from we had a bunch of guys that had to grow up quickly back there over the last couple of years that he's done a nice job of teaching them, if nothing else, how to work. The guy today, he's the all Galaxy corner, and he's covering, I don't know how many, 8 to 10 scout kickoffs. He's running full speed every single time. And so that again, that bleeds into every facet of your team, and that's a huge deal.
Ryan Thorburn?
I heard Jeff Long from the selection committee say last week that they did factor in that your offensive line was beat up against Arizona during their whole process. Obviously, that's not something you give out for public consumption, but is there a communication with them at all on injuries or anything like that?
Not that I know of. No.
So you just trust that they're going to do the homework if it comes down to that?
I'm going to trust that we're going to prepare for Utah. That's the only thing we need to trust. And if we're thinking about anything else, we're crazy.
Jake Ziven in the back?
Mark, Eric Dargan's been a playmaker.
And that's debatable. Sorry.
Eric Dargan's been a playmaker for you guys, creating interceptions, intercepting the ball, creating fumbles. What else is he doing well outside of what we see kind of in the highlights, or what others see in the highlights? In your eyes, what else is he doing well?
He's a great competitor at practice. He's a guy that again, if it's a 1-on-1 drill, a 3-on-2 drill, 4-on-3, whatever it is, 7-on-7, anything that we do, he's competing. And that again, a guy that's been a little bit nicked and dinged and playing a ton of key positions in special teams. He's a guy that we always match up with their best guy in a few different special teams roles, and he does a great job. So again, just a guy that's very conscientious of his job, and a highly competitive guy.
Warren Williamson in the back.
Mark, in the last couple of years, Oregon's had difficulties going into November, the last few weeks of the season. What steps do you take after a big win like Stanford so there isn't a letdown? And is that something that you talk to the guys about and preach to as you go into these last few weeks, or is that something you do all the time during the year?
Well, we've changed a few things over the course of this season in particular, just of how maybe our Monday, Tuesday has worked from a physical standpoint. We still have been lifting and doing a bunch of stuff on Monday that we've always done. We've tapered how we've done things a little bit differently, trying to think long term, and our level of health is where it is to some degree. In ways that we can't control, but our guys have played hard, in every game, and that's been very encouraging, and so we'll continue to take those steps. But again, it's kind of just a mindset, of showing up and taking care of business on particularly for us Tuesday and Wednesday, having very physical, competitive practices on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and then us kind of managing the fringe there from a mental standpoint.
Gary Horowitz.
Mark, I apologize if you already addressed this. I just walked in, but since
you've been
been
marked
here,
tardy, it was duly noted.
As far as just playing on the road, I know Oregon hasn't played at Utah since the Pac-12 began, but Oregon always seems to play well on the road. Is there something to that? Is there any kind of different approach, or do they just really enjoy how difficult it can be to play there?
Some people, I think some people would say that there's just a little bit more of an edge of focus. You've got a different set of issues to deal with. It's all, it's you together against everybody else. And, we have an incredible following on the road from our fan standpoint, but they're certainly outnumbered. But, maybe you're not dealing with tickets as much. You're not dealing with families, staying as much, all those things that might be a distraction. But our guys have managed that, in a decent or to a decent level so far, and hopefully they'll continue to.
Tyson Alger.
So this is a little bit of a random one, but BJ Kelly ran a relatively popular inside the locker room sort of Instagram account that was told to be shut down yesterday. Is that something that came down from you, or what's how did that happen?
As everything should and will, that will stay within the confines of our program. How's that for an answer?
Perfect. Andrew Greif.
You guys have faced a number of good defensive fronts. UCLA statistically Utah would seem to rank among the best. Can you contrast where these guys are among the UCLAs, the Washingtons, Stanfords you've faced?
Yeah, they're incredibly talented. They're leading the country in sacks and tackles for loss. So they're among the leaders, like you said. They are the leaders, and really physical guys that, there's some guys that are just fast and can get upfield that, are edge rusher type guys. And they are that, but they're also great run players too. They transition really well from either a play action into the pass rush or vice versa. People have tried to draw set them and then run the ball, and they redirect really well. Great scheme. A bunch of fast physical guys up front, but then they can, they're not afraid to play a ton of, man coverage in the back end because they're very long, athletic DBs in the secondary. So this team is phenomenal defensively. That Coach Sataka has done a great job. Kyle Whittingham obviously has a tremendous background in defense, and they tackle well. They're a high pressure outfit, and they can rush forward and create a lot of pressure. There were a couple teams this year. You turn on the film and it's scary. I mean, how much they get to the quarterback with 4 guys, and then they can add on both a zone and a man pressure component to it as well.
Jake Zivin in the back.
Mark, it's obviously election day. And the legalization of marijuana is on the ballot. Have you or anyone in the athletic department discussed plans for how to handle it with your players and with the athletes here if that measure passes and if marijuana becomes legal in the state?
These are some odd questions today. But ironically, yes, we have. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's happened in a couple of the way that's come up is just in the I'm trying to remember if this was nationally or in our Pac-12 meetings, having the in the state of Colorado and the state of Washington. Obviously, there's some level of legalization, and so that has come up as a topic, and we'll see where that goes. It's I think the biggest thing from our standpoint is there's no study for a student athlete type perspective that's a positive in any way. There's a lot of other angles to it, both economically and socially, that will be talked about and dealt with, but that's something that will have to get solved.
Thought you were going to ask if anybody in the department had smoked it.
You want to ask?
Andrew?
This question is not about weed. Matt Pearson goes down last possession of the game. You guys are just trying to kill the clock. Is that kind of one of the biggest things of all the injuries have caused in your O-line is that you're having to play guys late who are essentially starters and keeping valuable contributors in there when maybe in years past you could rotate through the young guys who've been practicing well?
Yes. I mean, tough situations. Certainly the timing and the circumstances of that were very difficult. But yeah, that we're not trying to do anything other than get out. Get the clock run out and get out of Dodge. And so from that standpoint, we've had just like you said, if there's one less chess piece, then the other chess piece has to stay on the board a little bit longer, and that is very unfortunate.
Rob Mosley?
Coach Whittingham said by his own admission they're pretty one-dimensional. They're having to run the ball. They're not throwing the ball as well as they'd like to, but Booker's still been really productive.
Yeah.
What are they doing in the run game to stay productive when maybe people might even know what's coming a little bit?
Yeah, well, first of all, Booker is a physical dude. He's one of those guys that great pad level. He doesn't look like he's going to be this huge power back, and all he does is break tackles and accelerate through contact. He's a guy that at great pad level, all you see are shoulder pads and knees coming at you, and he accelerates through contact and creates a ton of yards after contact. Certainly that's part of it. The front is phenomenal. I mean, big, fast, physical guys that are playing really well on their offensive line. And then they still have a lot of talent at receiver. And that's where they I've said it before. If you can run the ball, you can do anything, and they can definitely run the ball and create single coverage on the outside, and pound it and take some shots.
Gary in the back. Warren Williamson?
Mark, I went back and watched the Stanford game, and one thing that really stuck out to me was the downfield blocking by your offensive line. Ronas downfield several times, Terrell and Cameron. Is that something that you guys have concentrated on lately? Is it just something that you've gotten better at? That certainly seems to be an emphasis, and they've really done well at it.
Well, that's something, yeah, we take a lot of pride in. Hopefully that it's not just an anomaly of one game, but we want to play through the whistle. We want to be physical through the whistle, and that's our skill guys outside did a much better job in the Stanford game than in the Cal game and the Washington game of finishing blocks outside, and we had a couple, big situations in the offensive line. There was that screen. We had a couple times where as pullers they got to almost the third level, and so that was big. And then that creates obviously some space for those other guys to create.